Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello there and welcome to the program. I hope you can hear me. If you cannot, let me know right away, okay? Because we've got some technological issues here. You will see my new wonderful microphone if you're looking. And this was installed in the early hours of this morning, as far as we know, and with no consultation. And obviously, when poor Sokolowski shows up tomorrow, he will barely be visible. That's what you get when you come. Tomorrow. Oh, that's right. I'm not here tomorrow. Right. Okay, well, when Potter turns up on Friday, he'll barely be visible. I'm not here tomorrow. I completely forgot about that. I'm undergoing, and I think that is the proper verb, undergoing a medical test which requires sedation. And since sometimes I am able to do the show under sedation, which is fairly obvious, I will be physically somewhere else, and so unable to do the program tomorrow. I figured Sokolowski took, God, what did he take, over a month off with hospital issues? I can't have a day, and I picked a day, Sokolowski, where now he gets, left in the lurch. Anyway, lots of stuff to talk about. Things are really on the fritz here, and if you do have any issues on your end, will you please let us know, because we're sort of confused on ours. Not being engineers or necessarily technologically gifted, and but if I'm coming through loud and clear, you can let me know that too. That would be helpful. Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Oh, Lordy. Okay. Tom asks, I'm looking at my emails, Tom asks, isn't there a federal law that states that if a business operates in the United States and enjoys all the protections that brings, it must serve everyone equally with no prejudice, including religious prejudice? I could have sworn this would be the case. It would seem so, Thomas. I do not know if there is there's federal anti-discrimination laws. Don't know. I mean, if you're saying, here's my guess. Look, yeah, there probably is such a federal law, or there's certain, and even if there isn't, if Governor Brewer in Arizona fails to veto this noxious discriminatory law passed by the legislature there, it would be challenged as unconstitutional and end up doing the judicial route, which I'm sure would end in its being declared, the legislation, unconstitutional. So either way, they're not going to get away with what they are attempting to do. These poor, deluded, fearful souls. I'm obviously in a good mood if I can feel the slightest bit of sympathy for these frightened folk who, because it's mostly fear. It's fear that drives them. And usually when somebody is afraid and there's no reason to be afraid, I feel empathetic. But you can't talk these guys into abandoning their fear. They're comfortable, wrapped in it. They're incapable of embracing any kind of change. And they seem to have a great deal of difficulty in growing as human beings. So I don't know what to say. They'll always be with us. I think it's sort of a chemical mindset. And I think some scientific research, since we're starting to understand a lot more than we used to how the brain functions, although heaven knows we're probably still in preschool in that regard. I think some research has already shown that, we don't all necessarily get wired in the same way. Some of that is genetic, some of that, who knows what else, a little glitch here, a little something there. And as such, I think there are people who are wired to be more fearful, truly, who feel more comfortable in what they feel is a secure setting. I think those are people who are comfortable with authority. Those are people who are comfortable with rules, who don't rock the boat. Those are people who can function in a much more controlled environment. And then, of course, there's people like me who go insane in a rule-oriented environment and an authoritarian environment. And I swear, I think a lot of that is up here. And it's what I tell myself so I don't, start feeling hateful. And, of course, I'm capable of doing that, too. But today I'm obviously got up on the right side of the bed for a change. And, it should temper our reactions at total, derision of some of these folks, because I really think that they're operating on what they have to operate on. Am I being too generous? I mean, I wouldn't wish a fear-driven life on anyone. I wouldn't wish that the uppermost emotion driving anyone would be fear and anger, because life is short and you're not happy if you're just fearful and angry. You can feel energized being fearful and angry. Heaven knows you can. So maybe you get off on that because, you got your adrenaline going. Fear puts your adrenaline out there. Anger puts it out there. And so maybe that's like getting, you've heard of the runner's high. Well, maybe that's the fearful bigot's high, too. Being afraid, being angry. Because that hyper state of, I'm a victim. Something could happen to me at any minute. The whole world is against me. There's a conspiracy going on to take things from me and give them to somebody else. And I guess if that would be your mindset, you might get off on that. I can see that. So anyway, that's my explanation. That's my explanation. PJ writes, your discussion with Susan yesterday about unions and workers' rights really stirred up some memories. I heard the story of Louis Podolsky many times from my father, who was a boy in 1933 and lived in Allison, Pennsylvania, a small coal patch in Fayette County. He remembered fondly and proudly Louis Podolsky's funeral procession and the 10,000 miners that marched from Allison to Brownsville, clogging the road, with another 10,000 standing on the roadside. It was said the procession stretched the entire distance between Allison and Brownsville, a distance of about 2 3/4 miles. I can't help but think this historic tale has had a major influence on my views of workers' rights and human rights in general. My cousin actually now lives in what was Podolsky's house. It was referred to in the article below. And here is a newspaper account of what PJ is talking about, this funeral for Louis Podolsky. I'm sorry. Okay, this funeral of Louis Podorsky in 1933, Fayette County. 10,000 miners turned mourners today. This is the Pittsburgh Press. 300 militia men left machine guns and sentry posts to guard a cortege. Other soldiers marched to pay honor to a dead comrade. So in Allison, Brownsville, and Connellsville, on crowded roads and in a Catholic church, much of strike-torn, these are coal miner strikes, much of strike-torn Fayette County marked the coal strike truce that came too late. They were burying Louis Podorsky. For those of you who don't know why we're talking about any of this, it is because yesterday Susan and I were talking about how our home state of Wisconsin has literally eviscerated, destroyed public employee unions there. And Wisconsin was the birthplace of public employee unions, so it's particularly galling. And we started talking about it. There's so many people now who don't realize that their 8-hour day and their 40-hour week and their paid vacations and their sick leave and worker safety and all of those things, none of them existed before labor unions negotiated them. And this sense that unions are evil. And a lot of people who hold those views are people who are enjoying all those things I just mentioned. They have no idea where they came from. They maybe think that employers are by nature filled with largesse and by nature want to provide their employees with the most wonderful environment that they can and to pay them fairly. And if they think that, they are deluded, because every one of those things I mentioned, 8 hours, 40 hours, 5-day, paid vacations, yada, yada, all that stuff, every one of those things was fought for. And people died so you could have a 40-hour work week. People died. And we're learning the name of one now. And I'm reading you the account of his funeral, just to double back and do a little background. So here is the Pittsburgh Press from 1933. They were burying Louis Podorsky, 38-year-old miner, 38. Fatally wounded Tuesday, as miners and deputies clashed at Colonial Number 3, center of disturbances in the strike that threw nearly 40,000 men out of work. Only at early dawn had there been picket lines at any mines, and they were few. News of the truce authorized by President Roosevelt in Hyde Park reached 2 mines after the lines had formed at Oliver Mine, the scene of Podorsky's death. The lines broke up with the news, but few turned toward their homes. Instead, they joined the waiting crowds in Connellsville and Brownsville and at Allison. Other thousands who had earlier word of the Washington agreements on peace did not go to the mine entrances, but took their stand on the roadsides waiting for Podorsky's funeral cortege. Hours before the hearse had even started from the dead miner's home, there was not an inch of room in front of St. Mary's Catholic Church in Brownsville. Outside the humble home of Podorsky, who had served 18 months in France, this is during World War I, there were other hundreds. Women joined their men waiting by the church and on the long roads leading to it. So great did the congestion become that the miners own guides appointed from their number to cooperate with the militia in ruling out violence. Asked Mayor Kenneth Momeyer, commander of the National Guard, to halt the funeral autos 3 miles east of Brownsville. Let the hearse come through, they asked, but the autos would swamp this little town. The funeral procession will gladly walk. That's the account of the funeral of one Union member, Louis Podorsky, veteran, husband, killed. So, when I hear people disparage workers' attempts to band together, to have a place at the table, to negotiate their working conditions, I am incredulous. I am incredulous. Because there's not a one of us that do not owe these many martyrs great, great gratitude. PJ, thank you for sending that. Well, I've been told we are coming through loudly and clearly. Everything seems okay. This is good. I got a lot of things that I can talk about here. I was not intending to talk about that. There's an interesting thing that happened in the wake of Philip Seymour Hoffman's death. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I want to share it with you. There's a front page story in the New York Times about it today. One of the friends who found his body, and in fact the last person he texted, he had asked this friend, David Barr Katz, to come over and watch, I forget what, a basketball game or something with him. And this friend, who became friends with him because their children went to the same school, so it was one of those friendships, but they became very close. And a few days after Hoffman's death, the National Enquirer ran a big story, apparently. I don't read it generally, so I don't know this. Ran a big story and about Philip Seymour Hoffman's gay lover, and identified this gay lover as David Barr Katz. David Barr Katz found out about this as he was taking his 3 youngest children to school a few days after Hoffman's death. And his 14-year-old, who was looking, of course, down at his smartphone or whatever, turned to him and said, "Dad, did you see this? They said you and Phil are lovers. We're lovers." And David Barr Katz didn't think much about it. He sort of laughed and took his kids to school, and then happened to look at his phone, and he had a gazillion messages from people telling him that this libelous story had been put out by the National Enquirer. And they also said that Katz did drugs with him and blah, 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 blah. It was wholly unfactual. And what ended up happening as a result is rather interesting. Here's one thing that happened. It's a full page taken out in the New York Times today. And in it, an explanation. And in the middle, it says this: in honor of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who relentlessly sought out truth in his work and demanded the same from his collaborators, David Barr Katz has established the American Playwriting Foundation to make annual grants for new American plays. David Barr Katz, it turns out, well, his lawyer, got in touch with the Enquirer and said, guys, this is totally invalid. We could sue you, but we'd rather sit down and talk to you. And so they sat down and talked, and what they got out of the Enquirer, they didn't care about any admission of any. What they got out of him was an untold amount of money, which did not go to David Barr Katz, but went to the founding of the American Playwriting Foundation, which didn't exist 2 weeks ago. It exists now. It is going to, on a yearly level, yearly rate, give $45,000 out to one play that, coming out of nowhere. And it's already got a bunch of really wonderful judges who will be deciding this. And it says here that the Enquirer's initial funding will allow the foundation to give out these grants for years to come. And it goes on to say about Hoffman's relentless passion for truth. This is fascinating. So here's somebody who so did the right thing. This, I'm glad to say, this friend of Philip Seymour Hoffman clearly turns out to be a hell of a guy. Now, how could the Enquirer do this? Because I have always said the Enquirer, believe it or not, actually has some pretty damn good journalists. They do a lot of slumming, but they do tend to do due diligence. And this piece was written by one of their senior reporters, and it turns out he got totally hoodwinked by somebody purporting to be David Barr Katz, who gave them this interview about his affair with and friendship with Philip Seymour Hoffman, all made up out of whole cloth. And so there's something wonderful that came out of Philip Seymour Hoffman's death, and obviously David Barr Katz, who loved him and was so close to him, figured out a brilliant way to use this scurrilous bit of misinformation. And as he said, I didn't find it scurrilous that what he was really upset about was not this sense that, he might have had an affair with Philip Seymour Hoffman, even though he didn't. He said, because, both Phil and I work in theater. We're around gay people all the time. We have no problem. We don't think being called gay is a frightening or horrifying thing, or even a libelous or slanderous thing. What he was upset about was that they had suggested that Katz had snorted coke and done drugs with Hoffman, and he said he never did, nor did he ever see Hoffman do it. He said Hoffman talked to him about his addiction constantly and his struggle, but never did drugs in front of him. So something wonderful, because if Philip Seymour Hoffman was so interested in nurturing young talent and young playwrights, and he was a founder, I believe, of an experimental theater in New York that gave a lot of opportunities to people who were artists in theater trying to get their work out. And so that out of this Enquirer piece comes an entire foundation for nurturing that kind of thing in Philip Seymour Hoffman's name is wonderful. And that was also part of the deal, that National Enquirer would buy a page in the main section of the New York Times, and explain. It's good stuff. That's good news. Wait, I saw some other good news. Oh, the other good news, and I didn't talk about it the other day because Susan was on and she doesn't care about local issues, but the cab thing in the city. With the introduction of these internet-based ride-sharing companies in lieu of the yellow cab and the other cab systems in town. They're called Lyft and Uber. I saw my first Uber, I think, car the other day. Have you seen any?
Mustache.
That's with the mustache. Yeah. That's what I saw.
Okay.
You know, you don't always see a car with a big mustache on its front grill. And I did see one yesterday in Shadyside. Well, you know, these operations are illegal if you look at current law, but those are regulations set by the Public Utility Commission, and Mayor Peduto went right to Harrisburg and sat down, closed-door meeting with the chair of the Public Utility Commission, Robert Powelson, and clearly won him over if he needed to or whatever. And now the chairman of the PUC is saying, we got to rejigger things so that we can have this kind of operation. So this is wonderful news. The PUC has 5 members. We should only hope that 2 others are of the same opinion. And it's unclear whether legislative action is required as well. But I thought that the PUC, I always think of it as like the LCB, Liquor Control Board. I mean, so out of it. So back in the 40s or something. And actually, the chair of the PUC said essentially that. He said, some of the quotes, "We can't keep being the stodgy, out-of-date PUC. We need to get out of our own way and embrace and work with these carriers." So this is good news, Pittsburgh. I mean, nothing has changed, but that's really good news. I'll take a break, come back, and give my thoughts on the sentencing of former Pittsburgh Police Chief Nate Harper yesterday to 18 months in jail. And I want to say that this, Pittsburgh gets a lot of good publicity, but this story got a few inches, 3 or 4 inches, which is a pretty big piece in both the New York Times today and the Wall Street Journal. With all the news in the world, they thought both publications thought it worthy to have their readership know that the former police chief of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is going to jail. So it's not just a local story. My thoughts after this.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for an interview with comic Jim Norton, Pompeii, and Ciro Baptista. Plus, don't miss our annual summer camp guide. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, your smartphone at citypapermobile.com, and at the iPhone App Store and Google Play.
Moments in Black History, brought to you by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.
The European slave trade began as a system of trading guns and other goods to Africa in return for gold, silver, ivory, and other African resources. When the Europeans developed a need for more labor, they elected to use a combination of paying African kings for war captives and forcing or tricking people onto overcrowded slave ships. When the slaves arrived in America, they were sold for profit. The Europeans used their profit to purchase raw materials to take back to Europe for manufacturing into goods. Europeans used slaves as a principal means of economic profit and production, in essence, supporting the European economy.
I've seen too many of my neighbors affected by stroke.
But Highmark is helping us change that by sponsoring our community stroke programs. Caring isn't new for Highmark. I know. I've been a member for 40 years. I'm Jerry Ann Allen, and I'm better with Blue.
We're reinventing affordable health care by keeping the places we call home healthy. It's why our communities are better with Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield is an independent licensee of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, subject to the terms of your benefit plan.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
I don't know. Okay. So, I have found it interesting. I did not know Nate Harper, but I sure know a lot of people who did know him and dealt with him, and I've never heard a negative word. Everybody likes this guy. And it makes it that much sadder that a nice man, by all accounts in other areas of his life, a good man who had served in the police department for decades and had done a good job rising to the head of the department. And there were a lot of people who said, you know, he's already, and I can see, you know, there's just a lot of sympathy from people who didn't want to see him go to jail because, you know, chiefs of police in jail, it's not a comfortable kind of a fit, and it's potentially dangerous. But I was thinking that sympathy comes because we identify with him. He's sort of one of us. He was a powerful man. He was part of the establishment. He was well thought of. He was a nice guy. People enjoyed his company. And when you know somebody and you identify with them, bless you, and you identify with them, you know, your sympathy stuff kicks in. But what I couldn't stop thinking about was the fact that, okay, so he essentially stole $31,000 from us, from the taxpayers. And he allowed the theft of another $40,000, right? Is that about it? Well, let me tell you something. Nate Harper and his employees, the police, they spend a lot of time putting handcuffs on people, do they not? And putting them in jail. And putting them into a justice system that then sends them away for their crimes. Let's take a thief, for instance. So think of all the handcuffs that have been put on thieves, guys who grab money from a convenience store, guys who robbed a bank, guys who broke into a neighbor's home and stole something, you know, just thieves. We don't tend to have sympathy for those people. I've never heard any. At least coming from the same mouths of the people who have all this sympathy for Nate Harper. But if Nate Harper's job as a law enforcement officer was to nab people who broke the law and then to send them into the justice system to do what the law says then is their just deserts, he, of all people, should not be given any easier road. Absolutely not. He, more than any, knows the law, knew the law, knew what he was doing, knew it went against the oath he took. But I'll tell you something. I see why. We talk a lot about how no cop can ever get convicted in all these cases where somebody's dead, usually a black man. Somebody is dead by police or beaten to a pulp by police. And these cases go to trial. And the police invariably walk. Because a jury just can't see that an officer of the law could break the law. We know they do. And the only reason I guess Nate Harper got his comeuppance yesterday is because there was no jury. There was just a judge. I do not think that it's awful what happened to him in court yesterday. He got actually the lowest prison term suggested by the law. He's been told to pay back the $31,000. It's true, as his supporters said, his life is ruined. So why send him to jail? No, his life is ruined, and then he can go to jail. Just like all those other thieves that he arrested and his employees arrested. Whenever we identify with somebody, see, this is a white-collar criminal. He didn't have a gun. He didn't this. He didn't terrorize anybody. He just sort of slipped it under the table. And when it comes to white-collar crime, we white-collar types understand it better and have more sympathy, I think. I don't know. But it's sad, sad, sad. There's only one person who did this, who destroyed Nate Harper's life. And we know who it was. It wasn't the judge. It wasn't his friend Bedway. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't even, who knows who, if we've found out yet, who really set up that account. But the fact of the matter is, the only person who stole Harper's life, reputation, pension, freedom, was Nate Harper. That's my sense. And yes, I have sympathy for all these people, but I'll be damned if my sympathy just sort of... I have more sympathy for the guy who's doing more time for getting, $36 out of a 7-Eleven in a robbery. Or for the guy we talked about yesterday in Missouri who's serving life for 3 marijuana busts. I don't know. Okay, so that's what I feel about that. Oh, Margaret says, I was downtown, I saw a car with a mustache, and I thought, what a pompous ass. No, Margaret, that's Uber, right? Or is that not? No, that's Lyft. That's how they mark their cars. Why, I don't know, but it's sort of cute. So, no, that wasn't a pompous ass. That was a brand. So, I think Margaret said she, too, is sick and tired of people saying that it's a mistake, that he made a mistake. And he kept saying it was a mistake. I made that mistake. I don't know why I made that mistake. I agree. That's not the right word. It's not a mistake. It's something that a person of true character would not do. It's not a mistake. It's a crime. It was a crime. And if anyone knew the definition of a crime, it should have been the chief of police. It didn't seem like robbery like the bad guys they lock up, because those guys are scary. They take people's money that isn't theirs. That's exactly what Nate Harper did. He was just in a position to do it in a, less menacing manner. But he got caught, and a thief is a thief. And his thievery in the tens of thousands of dollars, I guess, absurd. That's an absurd price to pay, right, for your reputation. And he knows that now. And if he's still looking at that as a mistake he made, I think he's got to think deeper. I really do. Okay. I think, I'm going to, I'm not getting to any of the stuff I wanted to talk about. What is going on? Okay. Dang it. We'll take a break, come back, because there's really something I wanted to tell you about. This is a public service for all of you who, like me, are so sick and tired of those robocalls, even though we got ourselves onto that do not call list. I have a tip. Now, I tried to do it, but I'm so incapable of making my way around the internet sometimes that I couldn't quite complete. I didn't do it right, and they told me I didn't do it right. But there apparently is something out there that will block most of these things for you guys. So I'm going to give you a website and tell you how it works. I got it out of the New York Times business section. You'll do that right after this.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
BurgBargains.com is your best bet for great deals in the Burg. Log on today for exclusive bargains from your favorite local restaurants like Blue Line Grill, Atria's, Verde, Hokkaido, and The Colony. Plus discount tickets to the Symphony. The all-new BurgBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. BurgBargains.com.
We will not be an easy target. We will never roll over and let pain plan our day. We will protect our bodies and fight back by moving. We will do our morning laps, walk our dogs around the block, pass up the elevator, and proudly take the stairs. Because arthritis can't beat us if we beat it first. In the fight against arthritis, you need a weapon. What's yours? To learn more, visit us at fightarthritispain.org. This message brought to you by the Arthritis Foundation and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okie doke. So anyway, these robocalls, usually around 6 p.m., my phone starts ringing off the hook. It is so annoying, and they're all calls I do not want. Other than my family and a few friends, it is rare that anybody calls me on my landline, right? This is why people end up getting rid of them. So this is something that works only on landlines, and it's called No-Mo Robo. N-O-M-O, No-Mo, R-O-B-O, N-O-M-O-R-O-B-O, nomorobo.com. Okay? And I went to it, And I tried to get through it, and it says it's a cloud-based service that blocks robocalls or telemarketing calls before they reach your phone number. So they cut them off at the pass before you ever hear a ring. And so I thought, heck, I'm going and doing it. So, and the way it works, I mean, if you're interested, it uses, I'll just read this because it uses a simultaneous ringing feature available on most phone systems. Once a consumer signs up on NomoRobo, the system answers the rejected call and then hangs up before the home or office phone picks up. It works with most phone company carriers, but not all. And it's only for landlines. And if you have an antivirus system or corporate firewall, it might not work for you. It is free. So I went to it. I typed it in, and then they told me what to do. And you end up having, of course, to go to your phone server. First of all, they ask what your phone service is, and I told them I'm Comcast. And they said, okay, that should work. And they sent me over to Comcast. And that's where I ended up stuck in quicksand. Are you surprised? I get to Comcast, and their setup thing got me so confused, I couldn't for the life of me figure out what to do. It started out by saying, please note, this is Comcast telling me after I've been told by NomoRobo, okay, we got your name and number, but now go over to Comcast. And they say, Comcast tells me, this is only available to residential customers who subscribe to Xfinity Voice Unlimited, who have previously activated their Voice-to-Go service on their Android or Apple iOS device. To learn more about activating Voice-to-Go, please see Activate. First of all, I don't know if I have Voice-to-Go. Right away, they make it so friggin' complicated. Then they tell me I get to a point where they want me to sign in to Comcast using my primary Comcast ID and password. That's when I threw my hands up. I'm not aware that I have a Comcast password. I wouldn't know what it is. So you end up, because of the way Comcast then deals with this, you end up having to go down, make a lot of left turns, right turns, go down this alley, knock on this door, open that up, and by the time you get through all their mishigas, you're completely screwed up and don't know how to get back to the... Anyway, I got to tell you, good luck to you, but I think this works. It won a contest that the Federal Trade Commission put out for... it was called the Robocall Challenge, and it won it. And this does work. So if any of you figure out how to get through the maze of it, do it. It will stop, if this thing does work for you, it'll stop 90% of those damn calls you're still getting. So Colette is telling me it doesn't work with Verizon. I think it works with the Fios. Well, I don't know. So I'm just talking. All I know is I'm Comcast, and it does work with Comcast, but so Colette just tried. Somebody who's with Comcast, try it and see. Do you know if you have Voice-to-Go? I mean, why do they think that in our busy lives, we remember every little thing we signed up for and their stupid names for whatever service it is, and that we remember if we ever had to have an ID with them and a password? We don't have a clue. Jerks. So Comcast, of course, which is soon to be the monopoly, probably you'll all be with Comcast in another 10, 15 years if the SEC allows this merger to go through. And this is the kind of service you get from monopolists. Lousy service because, well, what's she going to do? The only store in town. Yeah, I can go over to Verizon. Oh, yeah, that's a big diff. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you that. No mo robo. And also, I'll save that. Just some horrific stories out of Africa lately. And you know what? I'm getting to the point where I can't even read them. Uganda, Nigeria. Oy. Latest out of Nigeria, Islamic militants of the Boko Haram movement. Hello, caller.
Hey, Lynn, it's Mike from D.C.
Hi.
Get rid of your landline. Why do you still have a landline?
Because I like talking on it more than... You don't get that little funky delay that you get on a cell phone. You know, like when you're calling long distance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do?
I do. I mean, I have it right now, but it's just part of...
It drives me
21st
nuts!
century.
It drives me nuts! The fact is I get a better reception with that damn landline. I do.
The $150 you pay for cable phone and what else doesn't bother you more?
Yeah, but if I can't get
And
there...
the monopoly alone that they have is enough for me to consider getting rid of my cable. I have Fios. And if I switch, there's this little device called Chrome, and I put it in the back of my TV, and anything that appears on my computer will now appear on my television.
That's cool.
Even your face, which isn't necessarily a good thing.
Well, jeez!
So now that I can view anything on my cable, on my computer, onto my TV, I called the cable company and I said, I want to get rid of all of my cable and just have internet. And they said, well, then instead of your cable being $40, it'll be $85.
Exactly right. So if you don't...
So...
Yeah, then what'd you do?
I called Cricket, who I have my phone with. I have everything on my phone for $55. And I said, is there any way I can get internet besides using Fios? And they said, yes, we have this device where you plug it into your computer and you get it through the air like you do your phone. And that's $40. So for $40, I might be getting rid of my cable, my $155 cable bill.
Good for you.
Now, I haven't done it yet, but monopoly, there's a way around every monopoly, and I'm really thinking about doing it.
Yeah, but you know what? They're always ahead of us. Like, my son, and I think, young people in general, he has his own apartment. He does not have cable. He does not have a landline. All these things that I think are like basics, and it's because he said, I can do everything on the internet. That's the way he feels. And
so is it worth it is that pause that we're getting right now worth $150?
Maybe not.
Because the cable bill is outrageous, and my cable is even cheap for most people.
Yeah.
People would love to have cable and internet for $150.
Yeah.
I think it is crazy, and my father would turn over in his grave. He knew I would spend $150 for something that we didn't even have in the 70s.
Yeah, I know that is not a necessity, but the reality is that there are ways that these costs could be held down if we lived in a more progressive nation, because there's no country in Europe where you pay anywhere near $150 a month for this stuff, because
isn't that even more incentive for us to say, screw Comcast, I'm going with Cricket for $40, and getting everything I watch on TV on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm showing my age with my reluctance here. You know, I'm an old lady.
Well, I haven't done it yet either. I'm 50, so I'm thinking, you know, there are some things I'll have to live without. Showtime and HBO. But are they worth, you know, $100 a month for me? So we can be like Europe. We just have to put them in the position so they say, wait a second, these people are smarter than we give them credit for.
No, but in Europe, the reason it works that way is their governments get involved. Their governments regulate these SOBs.
We are the government here.
How naive.
Well, that's what I was taught in civics at St. LaSalle. We are the government.
No, I think Comcast is the government.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I mean they've got our legislators and our Congress by the gonads, and so but in civilized nations, this is considered infrastructure. This is considered basic utilities, and so government regulates them and says you cannot screw people.
You mean utility companies don't make a profit in those countries?
Oh, I believe they do.
Wow, they don't have shareholders. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to tell you, get rid of your landline.
All right. I still have an
21st century.
I still have an old rotary phone that works. I love it. I love it. It's solid. You could kill someone with it. It weighs so much. Okay, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the call. And I was about to end on this horrible thing about what's going on. They burned the off. Oh my God! Is that okay? Did I do damage with that? Hello, caller.
Hello, Lynn. I love talking about the phone thing. I just read an article that recently that said that actually, if you want to be safe during an emergency, keep your landline, because the landlines are much more secure than the cell phones, because when power outages and stuff like that, the cell towers go down and you don't have any communication at all.
Well, you know what? There was a time, and I forget what it was, when I thought, thank God I have this landline, and it was something like that. It was a power outage.
And I agree with you. I have a friend who calls pretty regularly, and she has a cell phone, and she puts it on speakerphone. And I'm constantly asking her, please take it off speakerphone, because it's just the sound quality is just terrible.
Yeah.
And speaking of cable, my wife and I laugh because our cable bill is $10 a month.
What?
We never upgraded. We got cable, I don't know, like 20 years ago, and we were like grandfathered in, but we have the most basic thing you can get.
Oh, okay.
Okay? But we don't even find stuff on... We went with Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
For the other stuff.
Yeah.
And, so...
You can get it on Netflix. Exactly right. Exactly right. You're missing some great shows on HBO. Can you get that on Netflix?
Oh, yeah. Well, the thing is, when they go to discs... Now,
you're late.
6 months to a year behind.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
We get those, and and Netflix, I think we're paying $17 a month, but we have probably 6 or 7 DVDs come in every week.
Yeah.
My wife uses them in particular to exercise too. When she's like on her equipment, she slips a DVD in and passes the time. We also got an antenna for a television, that picks up the digital antenna, and I think she gets 10 channels on a TV in the exercise room, and you can get those antennas for like under $20. It just depends on how much. I mean, believe me, I know people that spend $150 a month for cable.
I know.
And bitch and blow about how they never have any money, and it's like,
yeah. Duh.
Yeah, it's just nuts.
I hear you. Okay, you. Lucky you. Don't rub it in. Goodbye. I'm never going to go to this horror in Nigeria because it's just beyond belief. Well, I'll tell you quickly. You should know. There's a whole organization operating in Nigeria, Islamists. The name Boko Haram means essentially that Western education is forbidden, and they mean it. And they have, in the last few months, twice barricaded students in dormitories and set them on fire and burned these kids alive. They just did it again. 58 kids burned alive. And anyone who tried to get out, they were shot and their throats slit. This is what's going on in the world. And then, of course, you got Uganda with its now hunting down gay people. It's just beyond belief. Beyond belief! And here we are worrying about how to get our cable. This is, American problems. Aren't we lucky? Well, I'll tell you guys, today is so tomorrow I'm not going to be here because I'm undergoing. This is what happens when you get older. You undergo tests. And I'll be back on Friday. Maybe a little worse for wear, but back. Okay. Tom will join us next week, and I certainly hope Chris Potter will be joining us this Friday. And enjoy the little bit of sun I'm starting to see. Okay, but stay warm. Love you all. Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.